Okay, I think we can move on to the next session. I hope we have Deepak. Deepak, are you there?
Afternoon, everyone.
Hey, Deepak, good afternoon. Warm welcome. Uh, so we have one more interesting topic, taking biases into account, why retrospective promise more and deliver less. Very interesting topic indeed, Deepak. So to introduce our speaker, Deepak itself, Deepak is passionate about quality. He has about 14 plus years of experience at Red Hat and PTC. He drove quality engineering for about 500 plus strong engineering group at Red Hat. He's also an international speaker with over 20 plus conferences to his credit. He's a chapter lead for Culture First and Ministry of Testing community, and keeping the testing knowledge and as well as building the testing knowledge and as well as raising awareness in terms of testing. Thanks a lot, Deepak, for the great work for our community, and over to you.
Thank you, Sundarasan. All right, let me quickly share my screen. Just one moment.
Sure.
Okay, can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay. All right, so hello everyone. My name is Deepak, and I'm happy on two accounts. First, I could excite the jury into accepting this talk, and second, I could excite you all in this session with the subject at least so far. I'm totally hopeful that the things that I present during this session would be really helpful for you. All right, you heard my intro already. So I am from the time when Jira was just a bug tracking tool, and they hadn't in their wildest dreams thought about giving fractional story points. And today's session is going to be about retrospectives, how we do retrospectives, not just in agile context, but overall, how do we rethink doing retrospectives in our lives? And my purpose with this session is to equip you all with the information that I have collected in the last 1 year or so by reading books and scientific literature about the art of reflection and everything. And I sincerely hope that at any point of time during your lives where you have to lead a retrospective or probably take part in a retrospective, this information that I'm going to share today comes handy to you. All right. So before we move on, I would like to set the record straight and make sure that all of us are on the same page with respect to certain definitions, right? So reflection is consideration of some subject matter, idea, or purpose in the past usually. So I'll give you an example. Let's say today morning I woke up and I had an argument with my wife, which obviously she won, right? So then I go to bathroom to take a shower, and I in, while it's while I'm taking a shower, I'm thinking about where did I go wrong, right? And that reflection is not just because in the future I want to win an argument against my wife. That's not possible. Uh, that reflection is just about to think that where did I go wrong? Maybe uh, should I have said something in a better way, or maybe in a more tactical way, stuff like that. There is no purpose, to be honest. But when you think about a retrospection, on the other hand, it is reflection, but in anticipation of something or with a purpose. If you look at our sprint retrospectives, right, we do retrospectives because we want to improve the way that that agile team works, right? Because they are an autonomous unit. They work in a certain way and they sit together and decide that, okay, this is where we went wrong, and in the next whatever time box is there, we're not going to do these things, and we are going to probably amplify these other things which were good for us. So this is the difference between reflection and retrospection. At any point, if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. Okay, so there are two types of reflection. Donald Shawn wrote a book in, I think, 1983, where he described both of these types of reflection. The first one is called reflection in action, and the second one is called reflection on action. So reflection in action means when you start reflecting on what's going on in the period of action, and that period of action can be anything. I'll give an example. Think about a football match, not American football, the European Indian football, the soccer game, right? Think about a match between Brazil and Argentina, and it's a 90-minute game, right? Let's say Brazil wins the match by 2-0, and after the match, when the Argentinian team sits together with their coach, they reflect on what went wrong. Did we not give passes really well, or did we not think about our attacking strategy or something like that? I'm not a great football analyst, but yeah. So the thing is that once the game is over, then they sit together and reflect on that. That is reflection on action, right? With the purpose of probably improving for the next game, if it is a tournament or a bilateral series. And let's say in the halftime of that match, they could not, the Argentinian team could not have reached their expected ball possession time, right? So in the halftime, they sit together and decide that, okay, we are not able to possess the ball as good as we would have liked. So this is what we are going to do in the next half. That is reflection in action, right? They're still in the game. The result is yet to be achieved, and you are reflecting in the action itself, right? So it is believed that scientifically, when you reflect in action, that is more accurate than reflecting after action, because of certain biases that we'll learn later. So this is my point. So if you think that if you draw parallels with our techniques of reflecting, so what would you call an event? In this case, it was a football match, right? What would you call an event in terms of iterative software development? Would that be when your software goes on general availability or a full release, or would that be probably at the end of one iteration, right? It can be anything, right? Even if when it is end of one iteration, where you deliver some tested usable features to the customer or whatever stakeholders, even in that period, you have to do reflection in action, right? What we normally do is we do retrospectives at the end of the sprint or whatever time box we have. And again, all those retrospectives are prone to biases and sort of other things. That does not make them the ideal retrospective in my understanding. Now, talking about books, there is this another book called Thinking Fast and Slow by Nobel Prize winner Daniel Kahneman. In this book, Daniel says that there are two types of thinking, or let's say there are two selves in every human being. One is the experiencing self and one is the remembering self. And in our lives, 90% of our decisions would be taken by the remembering self, and possibly not in the best interest of ourselves. And when you mix this thinking with the one that I told you in the last slide about reflection in action versus reflection on action, you'll know that it's the remembering self that takes all the decisions when you are doing reflection on action. You get my point? So the point is to somehow consciously use your experiencing self to reflect continuously, and that can happen when you adopt some kind of technique, right? We'll talk about those techniques as well. Okay, so one more thing to give you an idea about experiencing self versus remembering self. So Daniel also says that the happiness that we talk about is there are two kinds of happiness. One is you are happy in something and then you are happy about something. He also says that how you feel in your job is totally different than how you feel about your job. Now think about the developing economies like India, China, and all other countries. The work-life balance that we talk about all the time was never a great hiring incentive in these countries, right? Why so? Because workers are happy to go into a job where they'll face stress, long hours, and everything. So in the moment, they are facing stress, they are facing politics, and they are facing long hours and everything. Their work-life balance is in shambles. But in 2 or 3 years, when they sit and reflect on last 2 3 years, they have got salary increments. They have kind of uplifted themselves from, let's say, a lower middle class to the upper middle class or a high income group with that sacrifice that they made in those 2 to 5 years, let's say. Correct. So how they felt in their job in those 2 to 5 years was completely different. That was, let's say, for lack of a better word, terrible job, right? But once they have finished that job, or probably are still or grown up into some other role after that job, now when they look back at that job, they don't feel unhappy about it, even though in the job they were very unhappy, they were facing stress and work life balance issues, but now they feel really well. So the thing is that there is a lot of difference between how we experience things and how we remember those things. Daniel also gave a classic example about colonos colonoscopy surgeries for two patients. So they calculated the pain thresholds for both the patients, and patient A had collectively more threshold than patient B. But when they interviewed both the patient, in the end, patient B said that he felt more pain, but patient A said that he did not feel that much pain, and that was because there was a spike in the patient B's pain in the end. So what he remembered was whatever was in the end. So that's again the flaw between experiencing something and not recording it and not journaling it versus then sitting and then remembering that thing. All right, if you recognize this clip art, that would be a great thing. This is called Deming's wheel. All the continuous quality improvement as well as iterative software development methods originated from this thing. So do, check, act, and plan. So do something, check what you are doing. If you want to make some adjustment, act on those adjustments, and then plan for the next cycle, right? So modern retrospectives fit in the check part of this Deming's wheel. But that's not how they actually work, right? As I said, there are problems with modern retrospective. How we do them? One of the problem is we are using our remembering self while doing those retrospectives, and that's not a great thing to do. As I gave you so many examples and some ideas from those books, remembering what went well and what did not go well, celebrating small wins based on your memory is not a good idea, or making progress or trying to improve things that did not go well based on your memory is again not a great idea. There has to be a way to continuously journal, or probably write it down somewhere, or there has to be a way to reflect in the moment. So there is one more book by a surgeon called Atul Gawande. The book's name is called Better. In this book, he also talks about how does someone become great in their field of expertise. So Atul says that one thing is that they reflect very continuously, and then they start making improvements. And the second thing is that they get feedback very fast. So let's say you are releasing software. The feedback is not very fast, right? The software, you'll demo the iteration to the stakeholders, and then maybe some stakeholders will say that this is not good, this is not good, and then so there is still a long cycle of feedback. But on the other hand, let's say you are driving a car, learning to drive a car, and you just take 2 degrees more right turn and you will hit something, right? So that's a very fast feedback. So learning a car would be so you'll become a better driver because the feedback that car gives you back is faster than probably becoming a better software delivery manager. So the speed at which you get the feedback after you do something also matters in this cycle. Okay, so in 2002, John Bain and some other scientists did a paper, I think in University of Edinburgh, and they presented this framework for reflection. So think about every retrospective you have been in, right? When I talk to my team members, especially junior team members, I ask them, when you go to a retrospective or any other meeting where you have to probably present what went wrong and what went well, how do you report it? So if your team members are reporting something as it happened, like a news, then that's the lowest form of maturity in retrospectives, right? So if they are presenting something in a way that they know based on their experience what went wrong, and they also know why did it go wrong, and now they also have some idea in their mind how to fix it in future. If every member of the team is presenting their retro points in such a way that they already have some idea of how are they going to reconstruct everything into a better plan, then you are at the highest level of reflection maturity. And this, you can do this exercise. You just take your last retrospective document and go through the points listed in all the headings, what went well, what did not go well, and you can then rate them according to 1 hour, 2 hour, or 3 hour, and calculate whether your entire team at what stage is your entire team with respect to the retrospective maturity model. All right, now the most important part of this presentation, biases. So as I said, it's not just the remembering self versus the experience self that makes our modern retrospectives ineffective. It's also the biases. So whenever you use your remembering self, you automatically make yourself prone to biases. That is very natural way of putting it. So think about performance management of employees in a company, right? So let's say I have a team of 5 engineers, right? So they work well in the entire year, and when the time comes for performance reviews, I sit together and try to remember that what were the good things that they did, and then I note them down, and then I also try to remember what are the things which they should improve, and then I note them down, and based on that I give them the feedback. This is your annual feedback and appraisal, and this is what it is, right? But do you think that's a great way of doing it? I'm trying to sit and remember the entire evaluation period of 1 year, or maybe 6 months or 1 quarter, right? Does not matter as long as I'm using my remembering self to do this exercise. So as soon as I engage my remembering self, I make myself prone to the recency bias. So based on the same colonoscopy example that I gave, I will only remember the most recent things, right? I'll not remember these smaller great things, the behaviors, great competencies that they have demonstrated throughout entire year. I'll only remember the recent things mostly, and the things which would have some prominence in terms of stakeholders and customers. That's it. But that's not a great, well-rounded performance management, right? That's still full of bias. And then to also give you one more example of recency bias is, you see, you all might have gone to movies, right? So you go into a movie, it's a slow burn kind of movie, and then there is a great climax, right? So do you ever think that why do all these movie makers put so much emphasis on climax, right? There is always something where everything descends into the center, and then there is a big fight or big reveal or whatever, big twist and turn, right? In the end, they want to make an impression when you leave the movie hall. uh, they when you start to reflect on that movie, when you leave that movie hall, reach your home, one of your friend sends you a text asking how was that movie. You start remembering about that movie. All you remember then is those last 20 minutes, right? If they were good, you'll say that, yeah, it was a great movie. And based on that word of mouth, that movie will probably go on to make millions. That's how recency bias alters our thinking and everything. The second bias, which makes the retrospectives ineffective, is called halo effect. So halo effect is something where what we do is, there is one big thing that hides the every other small thing, right? So in terms of resumes, we say that if you are a, let's say, a full stack engineer, you should be at least good in at least one of those stacks, right? You should not be mediocre in all three stacks. That does not make you a good full stack engineer. So halo effect means that something during that evaluation period, which in this case was a sprint, something happened, maybe a bug leaked into production or something, or some stakeholder gave you a very strong vocal feedback about something very minute. That thing would take over the entire retro discussion, entire meeting, right? Because it came from someone who was very up in the hierarchy. And that again defeats the purpose of having an autonomous Scrum team or an agile team, right? So halo effect is when one thing hides or masks every other small win or improvement that you could have made, but just because of this prominent thing that happened during the evaluation period, now everyone in the team is talking about this thing, right? They're not paying attention to every other bad thing or good thing that happened during the sprint. And the third thing is called law of small numbers. So what happens is, I have seen it. It is very common in cross geo teams, right? So let's say there is a team with some engineers in China, some in India, some in North America, right? So it is very common that in a team of, let's say, 10 or 8, there are just 2 or 3 people who are very vocal, and every other person is just very quiet in the meetings. So there is a difference of distribution of communication in the group. When that happens, what is happening is in the retrospective as well, there are only certain people, a very small number of people who are giving their feedback in the retro sheet, right? They tell you what happened wrong. They tell you what went well. And obviously, when there are only two people who are giving the feedback, the action items that you gather from that retrospective would be also catering to those points which only a small number of people mentioned. And that does not mean that whatever was decided is good for entire team or entire process that you are following, right? So what does that mean? That means there has to be an equal distribution of communication in the team. And this is not, I don't think this is negotiable at all, right? People, everyone in the team should be empowered enough to probably come to a meeting and say that, okay, I think this is, there are different perspectives, I agree, but they have to be shared in the meeting. And the last point which I want to talk about, which I think hampers the retrospective again, is called sunk cost fallacy. Let's say again, a team of 8, they 3 months ago they spent a good chunk of time uh, deploying a new logging framework for their application. Think about this scenario, a hypothetical scenario. They put together a good, which they thought was a good uh, logging mechanism for their application, and now that logging framework is probably slowing the things down and causing frustration to all the developers. But since they are so emotionally invested in that, they had spent a good amount of learning and time in and labor in probably writing that code. They're not very happy to talk about it. It's kind of an elephant in the room. They don't want to talk about it in the retro. That okay, let's get rid of this and probably adopt a new logging framework or something else, right? So as as a as a leader or a senior member of the team, I think it becomes the responsibility of that person to keep an eye open for such things. Is the team going in the way of sunk cost fallacy? Are they trying to drag something which is slowing them down, but they're not willing to talk about it because they were kind of emotionally invested in it, or whatever, for whatever reasons, right? So this is called sunk cost fallacy and plays a good amount of role in making your retrospectives ineffective. Let's do a quick time check. 3:48. All right, some takeaways and some tips. So as I said, we have to discontinue the use of remembering self while doing retrospective, and it is regardless of whether you are doing retrospectives for a game or for your software development, right? So you have to get rid of your remembering self. And how can you do it? You can do it by journaling frequently, maybe daily. That depends, whatever the time period of that event is, right? How fast is the feedback? Based on those two things, you have to decide how frequently can you journal those things. How frequently can you journal and reflect? The second point is reflection is a skill. So I have linked it to a, I think, a research paper by John Bain, which talks about how they used journal writing as a technique to increase the reflective skills of teacher students, right? Students who go on to become teachers. So teaching is also an art, right? They teach the budding teachers in this school. It's very complicated, but yeah. So there is a school where they teach the budding teachers to how to teach. So in that school, they did some kind of research, and they saw that journal writing was one of the things which improves your reflection skills. And then, as I said, if you remember that bias law of small numbers, you have to enable fair communication distribution in this scheme. This is non-negotiable, and this does not, so there is a byproduct of enabling fair communication. The byproduct is that you also increase your psychological safety levels in the team, right? People are not feeling the risk when they go to a meeting and talk about something. They don't feel the risk of being ridiculed on their inputs or on their ideas or perspectives. And with that, I think I'm done. And now I'm very happy to take all the questions.
Hey, thanks a lot, Deepak. I think we have 4 more minutes. So there's a question from Jyoti Shaw. Most of the teams fail to retrospect effectively. Any advice how that can be improved?
Yeah, hi Jyoti. So as I said, you have to reflect very continuously, and that can happen when you do some kind of journaling, right? Think about it. There is a radical idea which I gave in my organization, that why don't we have a field like a custom field on our every Jira that I can use to, let's say today I'm working with the backend team, and they are annoying me with one of the JSON object that they provided me, and now I want to write it down. I don't want to wait for the sprint and retrospective to write it down, right? This is the problem that I face today in this moment, and I want to write it down in that Jira, right? So that is the power of journaling in the moment. You don't have to use your reflecting self when you see after 3 weeks. Maybe you'll forget this thing, right? Maybe that backend team will do something very good and you will think that they are a bunch of heroes, right? But in this moment, they did something which is causing me grief, and I want to write it down, and that should be discussed as part of the retrospective in the end. If every developer tester in the team does practice regular journaling, I think retrospectives can be improved a lot. And then the other 2 points, having fair distribution. Just keep an eye open for the people who are very quiet in retrospectives.
Hey, one more question. I'm going to merge Jyoti's question on team members are reluctant to share their observations and sometimes feedback is superficial. There's also a question from Jeevan Lingappa on, do you use any tool for the retrospective? If yes, please name it and why. I think both are kind of correlated because most of them do not give feedback because they want to stay anonymous. But of course, I would leave it to you to kind of give it.
The problem is people, if there are people in your team who don't want to give feedback, honest feedback, then there is a problem of psychological safety in the team, right? They are not feeling empowered enough to give the feedback, or they feel that if they give honest feedback, they will probably have to face consequences for it. That is the first sign of a dysfunctional team. So if you are a team leader in that team, I strongly recommend talking to these people and making sure that they don't fear uh, taking risks in the meetings.
Okay.
And about a special tool, Jeevan, no, we don't use any special tool for retrospective. We just use a Google Doc, and the point is filling that Google Doc regularly, right? You should not be filling it at the end. That defeats the purpose of continuous journaling.
Okay.
Any other questions?
There's just a note of thanks for you from Karun. He enjoyed the session. He took a lot of notes from your speech and also your references from the books. So he wants to thank you. And Jeevan says she uses pointing poker.
I think pointing poker. I think these poker apps are for grooming, not retrospection, essentially.
Okay.
But yeah, maybe there is a way to do retrospection with poker. I don't know. That would be anonymous. Why would you do anonymous retrospection, right? That again defeats the purpose of psychological safety in the team.
Yeah, I think that's an area that most companies struggle. Even in my previous workplace, we used to use Fund Retro because it is anonymous, and we want to make sure that everybody gives us feedback. But of course, I understand from your point, it also reflects on the maturity of the team.
Yeah.
Right. Sure. And yeah.
And we have to reach that maturity, right? There is, see, the point of doing an anonymous complaints kind of, or anonymous retro. I think that speaks very poorly about the management in that team, right?
Yeah.
So it straight away says that there are people in this team who are scared of giving their honest views in public, and that should not happen anywhere.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks a lot, Deepak. We are already at the top of the hour. This was a very, very informative session in the sense that we had a lot of good takeaways. I mean, the way you actually brought in a lot of analogies to make it easier for all of us to understand the biases, that's classic. Thanks a lot. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed the session, and you can actually see towards the end of your session, there were too many applauses that came across on screen. So I'm sure the audience enjoyed it too, and had a lot of takeaways for them to go back to their organization and implement. So once again, thanks for taking the time this afternoon for giving us a very informative talk on the biases in retrospective.
For having me, and thank you everyone for listening.
Sure, it's our pleasure.
Have a great day, everyone. Bye bye.